connecting. I'll let you know when we're live. I think we're live. Hey everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're just going to take a few seconds here and let folks join us before we start. While people are hopping on, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. Just give me a couple seconds here. Okay. All right, yeah, we'll give folks a few seconds to hop on, but while we're doing that, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Julie Wilson, and I'm the Communications Manager for the Socially Responsible Agriculture Project, also known as SRAP. I'll go ahead and give some background about SRAP while we're waiting for people to join. For more than 2 decades, SRAP has helped inform the public about the negative effects of industrial livestock operations, also known as factory farms or concentrated animal feeding operations, which are also known as CAFOs. SRAP provides direct assistance to communities impacted by this destructive industry. Through education, advocacy, and community organizing, SRAP helps people to protect public health, environmental quality, and local economies from the damaging impacts of factory farms, and also to advocate for a socially responsible food future. So we are here today with 3 of my colleagues. We've got Craig Watts, Susie Crutchfield, and Michael Diaz, all 3 of whom are former contract poultry growers who now serve on SRAP's field operations team. They are also part of SRAP's contract grower transition program, which looks for ways to help contract growers leave the industrialized poultry system behind by training them to work with the communities most harmed by industrial agriculture. We'll throw a link to that program in the chat here in a little bit. So we're here live today on Facebook to kick off a new SRAP series called Poultry Cracked Open: How Agribusiness Giants Exploit Small Farmers. The series includes 4 episodes that will air on Facebook Live and cover the following topics: personal stories from 3 former contract poultry growers and how they felt trapped in the contract grower production system; how the industry's tournament system creates a discouraging way for farmers to earn a living; and why proposed changes to the Packers and Stockyards Act could lead to better protection for small farmers. For more info on the future episodes, you can check out the events tab on our Facebook page. There you'll find a list of the upcoming episodes happening next month, actually April, May, and June, and you'll see the descriptions for those, so be sure to tune in. Today's episode is called Life Beyond the Contract: How 3 contract growers left the business. So during today's episode, we'll chat with 3 former contract poultry growers who escaped the grip of industrialized poultry production to work with rural communities harmed by industrial ag, and how they were able to leave contract production once and for all. Before we go into introductions, I just want to let folks know, anyone who's watching today, if you have any questions that pop up during today's live stream, feel free to put those in the comments section, and we'll do our best to revisit those at the end during a Q&A. So with that, we're going to dive into introductions. And I think Michael is going to start.
Thank you, Julie. My name is Michael Diaz. I, along with Craig and Susie, are part of SRAP's contract grower transition program. And we aim to engage contract growers who are struggling in the system. All of us here understand that it's fairly easy to get into contract growing, but nearly impossible to escape it. By providing our personal experiences and insight to the fight ahead of you, if you choose to exit, which is what I'm hoping this builds in our audience, we're here to help navigate the waters ahead for those who are seeking to move on from contract farming. I myself, I'm a former contract grower. I grew for 3 different integrators. And I quickly realized that I made a bad decision, a really bad decision for me and my family. And just like Susie and Craig, the industry bore down on me really hard, forcing me to make a hasty decision to exit contract farming. The result was catastrophic because we wound up losing our family farm and our home. Thankfully, with the help of people like Craig and SRAP, we were able to get out from up under the entanglement of these poultry giants and start rebuilding before all was lost, you know. And the sad reality to it is that so many of us are not so fortunate. The industry has a way of not just ruining your past, it ruins your present, and sadly enough, it'll really cripple your future as well. So with that, I'll, Susie, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, my name is Susie Crutchfield, and I am a former broiler grower from Arkansas. I have grown since 1987. And I started out as a farmer. We had a farm. We grew cattle. We had a home. It was paid for. And then we decided that we wanted to supplement that and add something to it. So we seen an ad in the paper for a local company, poultry company, was adding houses. And so we decided we would add some chicken houses to our cattle farm. Needless to say, that wasn't a good idea, but as I wanted to stay home and raise my children. I didn't want to work out and try to raise my children. I had 3 children. So that was one of the reasons that I wanted to build the poultry houses, because that was the income coming in for me. So we talked to the integrator, and the integrator told us, well, it's an investment, and you invest for 10 years and basically you do nothing. Get nothing for 10 years. Then after 10 years, you'll have it paid off, and then you'll start reaping the rewards of the money that you've been paying on your loan. And so we went on, and the industry just kept getting worse. And then they started wanting updates and updates and more updates. And then in 2010, they started a program that they wanted all the growers to update. And when they did, it caught us with having to update up to $350,000 for our chicken houses. At that point, we had to say no, because some of the updates would have cost us more than the 2 first chicken houses we built originally cost. So we said no. They shut us down. We had to declare Chapter 12 bankruptcy. And from that, we was able to save the farm, as in we still have it. We are still making payments on it. But we did have to declare a Chapter 12. But the integrator where we live just happened to be the only integrator in the area, which is called a Montopsoni. And this means that, you don't have anybody else to go to. So we were just either shut down or you grow for this company. And this is part of the legal control that these companies has over us. The laws do not protect the grower, it protects them. And that's one reason that me and my husband, we sued them pro se. Of course, the saying about pro se. Yeah, it was. We didn't win. We didn't get nowhere really, but we did sue them. And that's one of the reasons that I am working with SRAP today. I want to find better treatment for the poultry growers and to inform them of what they can do to help themselves. And that's the reason that I'm still working with SRAP. I started working with Social Responsible Agriculture Project when I first, in 2012, they started helping me. And then I'm working with them to help other growers. And now then I'd like to have Craig introduce himself to you.
Craig, you're on mute.
I wish I had $1 for every time I said, you're on mute this year. I would be a very wealthy man. But Sherry Duggar is the executive director of SRAP, and I had a conversation about bringing on contract poultry growers. And basically, this is how I knew Susie from a few years back, and I'd met Michael a few weeks before, but, you know, they've really come on and just been a pleasure to work with. My story is, you know, probably a little different, but some of the same issues. In 1991, I had been seeing the world from inside of an airport. I got kind of tired of it, kind of got the bug, wanted to go back to the farm. Naturally, when I was farming when I was a teenager, I hated it. But when I turned 25, I was ready to settle down and move back home. And it was that exact same time that the poultry companies were coming in. And Susie said that they put an ad in the paper and they did the same thing here. It said, we need a few smart birds that raise our birds. So I'm not the smartest man in the world, and I've done some stupid stuff, but this is the last stupid thing I did on purpose, was take that meeting and have that representative from that poultry company come and talk to me, because like Susie said, oh, you're going to get paid out in 10 years, and then you're going to be in the big house counting money, part-time work, full-time pay, and we're going to work together and grow together and all this stuff. And so everybody has their honeymoon phase, and mine was probably the first 3 or 4 years. It was after 2 years, I built 2 more houses. And then I was like, got that first check and it didn't double the income, but the expenses way more than double. I was like, uh-oh. And so I just said, well, I'm just going to grind out the days and pay off this debt. And in 2004, I actually paid my farm off, which not a lot of people had seen that deed of trust to come back to them, but I did. And of course, it was that time we had to have these upgrades, or basically they told me they were going to hold me out of birds. And that's what really started souring the relationship. And as time went on, there were just more chinks in it. About 2008, the government, the Congress charged the USDA with coming in and fixing some of these issues with contracts, like, you know, security, you know, not this opaque the tournament system that they pay us with. You know, you got to give God notice. You can't hold them hostage between flocks and make them do upgrades, that kind of stuff. And so I got involved with an organization called the Rural Advancement Foundation International. They kind of held my hand and helped me navigate doing some press and going talking to congressmen and stuff. And so that kind of got me in the press a little bit. And so as time went on, the relationship with the company just went south. I just never felt like I was getting told the truth. And I really had an issue with that. They brought out this thing called the USDA process verification. It was supposed to be some kind of deal where we separated ourselves from the pack, that we were doing a better job. And I found out the standards came from the National Chicken Council, who are the lobbyists for the industry, which it's like grading your own test paper. It was a joke. And so I felt like they were holding the farmers to a much higher standard than they were holding themselves. And just over time, I just connected with a young lady, and we did an expose in 2014, and that came out. It hit the New York Times, it hit the Reddit board, millions of people saw it, turned my world upside down. Had a lot of media then, documentaries, you name it, a couple of movies. And, you know, and then I just exited out in 2016 and started working with SRAP, and, you know, that's kind of my story.
Thanks, Craig, Susie, and Michael, all of you, for sharing that information with us and your background and how you got into farming and what your experience was working for these contract poultry production systems. We're going to go ahead.
I got into farming when I was just a girl. I started out, my daddy had cattle farms. I braked hay. I helped him all of my life. And then when me and my husband got married, we had cattle too. And that's one reason that we got poultry, is because the fertilized. It seemed to be a complementary thing to go along with our cattle operation. It turned out to be a nightmare, but that's how I got into it.
Okay, thank you, Susie. And can some of you tell us how long you worked as a contract grower?
Well, I'll say this. I was, you know, I've been involved in some aspect of farming most of my life. Getting into industrial ag, 3 years. 3 years was enough for me to realize that, like I said in the beginning, I'd made a really bad decision. And so we were in and out of the industrial agricultural sector rather quick. How about you, Susie?
I was in it longer than any of you. So I started in 1987. I was in it for 25 years. At the first, it seemed it was all right. There was more respect for the grower from the integrator then, but as time grew on, it changed. It changed dramatically. In the 80s, it wasn't bad growing, but when you hit the 2000, it turned completely upside down. What about you, Craig?
Well, I was a grower for one company for 22 and a half years. And then in the middle there somewhere, I grew with another company for a little over a year. So that's 23 and a half years. I just put it this way. When I started, my hair was jet black. So I was in a long time.
And can you guys talk a little bit about what life was like on the farm? What kind of hours did it take to run the farm? And also what kind of financial contribution did you have to put into it to run it?
I'll start that one off, Julie. I mean, that's a funny question. The only life was on the farm. It was a 7-day week, 24 hours a day. Somebody's always on call. It was me, my wife. We have 4 children, 4 boys. Somebody was always doing something every day, and many of the times it wasn't just your daily routine. It was having to meet the demands that these integrators were putting on you just about every week. They'd come with something new, and we're going to go over stuff like this in our some upcoming episodes, but they call us independent contractors, and there was nothing independent about anything we did on that farm. It was mandated, and it was laid out and sketched out, so they had stuff for you to do every day, 24 hours a day. I couldn't even imagine putting an hour to it. And as far as the financial contribution, it was it took everything we had to get in, and took just about everything when we got out. Susie, how about you?
Well, I will tell you a story about when I was growing, and it was 100, and I think the highest it got was 112. I had 3 kids. I had 3 chicken houses. There was a child in each chicken houses walking the wall, keeping the chickens off the walls. And I was going in between each one of the houses just as quick as I could to make sure there wasn't anything happening to the kids or to the chickens. But this was normal for the summertime. Same thing in the winter. You didn't have to walk them, but you had to be with them 24/7. It's just the way chicken life is.
Thank you both for talking about
I'd like to add a little bit. Going in, Susie mentioned a minute ago that back in the 80s, it was different. And it was, there's still that element that was floating around when we got into the poultry business of that 80s type of atmosphere that surrounded the poultry industry. You thought that it was a good way to supplement some income. You thought it was that little house on the prairie type of lifestyle. And when you analyze the cost to get into it, you were thinking like, well, there's no way I'm going to be able to afford, building these things. We had 4 houses that were 50 by 500 feet long. There were 100,000 birds on our farm at a time. And it was easier to get into that poultry facility than it was to buy a new truck. I know Craig Watts has heard that comment before. But it was, to hit on your question about the financial drain that it puts on a family. I mean, you come to a point where you got to stop bleeding somehow, and that it's hard to put a dollar amount on the finances, the financial aspect that went into that farm, because it took just about everything we had just to keep it going. So that element of this 80s style farming, by the time we got into it in the 2000s, it was gone. That didn't exist.
And can you talk a little bit about what you knew about contract farming before you went into it, and what sort of skills did you think that you would need?
You're on
Craig,
mute,
I think you're on mute.
I'll get it sooner or later. Yeah, That's an interesting question. You know, when I got into it, I was 25 years old, so I knew everything. I didn't need any help. But actually, what I thought that I needed was an agriculture background, a business degree, a good work ethic, and I had all that. What I did not plan for was the absolute loss of control of my farm. Like once that little white truck and that service tech from that integrator pulled up, I mean, you might just hand them the keys and go home because they're in control. What kind of skills did I think I would need? I mean, I didn't know that I was going to have to be a plumber, electrician, an accountant, you know, a mechanic, but that's wound up. I knew a little bit going in, but I didn't know a whole lot, but I knew a whole lot coming out because you couldn't afford to hire it out and do anybody else. So, you know, just, you know, that was what I needed to do.
So in contract poultry farming, the corporation who controls most aspects of the business is called an integrator. Can you tell us what your experience was like working with your integrators?
I'll fill that first, Craig. I'll pass it off to you. The word that he just used, control, was spot on. Working with, there really is no working with the integrator. It is an enormous amount of, you're following orders. You know, we signed on with this fairy tale dream that we were going to be able to run a family farm. We were going to be able to have some input and say into the daily operations of running our farm, you know, and just like Craig said a minute ago too, you know how you got to be an electrician, you got to be a plumber, you got to be a carpenter, you've got to be an expert in just about everything. And I think we did pretty good job at that. There was nothing on that farm that you know our family couldn't tackle. We didn't have to call anybody. There was no need to seek any outside help to do anything from changing a breaker to installing a feed line. There was nothing that we couldn't have complete in-house. There was every element needed there that should have made us successful, except for the integrator's control over our farm. The integrator's control was what was in the best interest of the integrator, not what was in the best interest for our family farm. Craig?
My tale, I guess, is a little bit different. I'm kind of like Susie. When it started out, it wasn't that bad. I mean, when I started in August of 1992. I was 25 or 26, I can't remember, but at that time. But most of the people that were working, like the service techs and the broiler managers and all that stuff, we were all about the same age, and it felt like we were all kind of learning together because poultry was new in our area. That complex was brand new. There was no poultry. I was probably within the first 20 built in that county. And so I felt like we were kind of, you know, pulling the wagon in the same direction. But then just, I don't know what flipped the switch, but, you know, when you question why, you know, it was like, well, we don't have to come your way anymore. And they didn't. I mean, they could cancel that contract for any reason at any time. So you kind of would have to fall in line. But yeah, I think it's very odd in this business that they are integrators. They are vertically integrated, and they own the hatchery, they own the breeders, they own the trucking, they own the processing plant, they own the feed mill, but they don't own the farm. That's kind of sits over here to the side, but they control the farm. Make no mistake about it. Through that deal Susie was talking about, because a lot of times they're the only game in town, and there's no other use for a chicken house except for raising chickens and to pay that debt off. I mean, I've already explored the alternatives, and I don't have any debt now, and there was nothing would have satisfied that debt to get into it. So when these guys, you know, they're not about a grower being efficient or good or a nice guy or anything like that. They're about keeping you in debt, keeping you pliable. They got you under the thumb. They control you. That was my relationship with the integrator after about a couple of years into it.
Craig, mine was about the same. We went from 87 to 90, 92, along when you started into it. And it was good. You know, we got along, like you said, we're your friends. The company paid you a Christmas bonus. The company asked you if you needed, they helped you with your gas during the winter. just all these different programs that they offered. But then when the late 90s and the early 2000s started, it was the laws had changed. And with the changing of the laws against where they couldn't sue, where you couldn't sue them, it gave them the power to start forcing the growers to do what they wanted more than before, when the growers did have a chance to sue them. And there was several lawsuits out there that had won in the earlier years, but the later years, they lobbied and got all the laws changed to where you couldn't sue them. And that's when they started pushing their thumb down on you, so to speak. That's when they really started changing. And it wasn't just one company, it was all of them, because they seen that they could control the growers then. But they've always controlled the chickens, the feed, the pickup, the weights. Everything has always been controlled with them, except the ownership of the farm. That's the only thing. And you really don't own it because they control what you do. They come out and write you a little note saying, hey, I seen a feed pan that was empty, or I seen a window that was cracked that wasn't supposed to, or a curtain. And they give you lists that you have to do every time they come out. That was my experience with them.
Susie, I'm gonna embellish a little bit on what you said when you said all of them are the same way. You know, a lot of us growers get into these areas and get into these contracts with integrators, and generally there's one integrator to service your farm. So, you know, a lot of us are getting into millions of dollars in debt with one integrator that's your lifeline. Fortunately, where we were, there was at least 3 different integrators that would service our farm's location. So me thinking that, okay, I'm going to jump ship from this one because this business model really isn't working out. We were fortunate enough to try 3 different integrators, only to find the same thing that you just said. They were all the same. It's like they sit at this big round table, and they sit there with 3-piece suits on and shiny shoes and figure out how do they trap that farmer and make sure that it's equal across the board no matter where you run. They figured it out. They were all identical.
So is it safe to say that if you knew then what you know now, you probably never would have entered the business?
Oh my goodness. You know, I had a chance. I was working with an ag chemical company or contracting with an ag chemical company, and it was either stay on the farm and raise chickens, or I could have went to work in Kansas City with that company and ran their research farm, and I opted for chickens. So if I had that to do over again, I'd probably go to Kansas City. But there is a movie, The Gumball Rally. Y'all probably too young to, well, Susie, you might remember it, but the other 2 are too young to remember it. But they're driving, and the guy grabs his rearview mirror and he throws it at the window. And the guy said, "What did you do that for?" He said, "Well, what's behind us is not important." So that's kind of the way I live life. What's behind me is not important. You know, I relive. I'm not going to relive the past. I remember it, move on, learn lessons. But sometime in 1991, there was about a 5-second interval where I could have said, "No, thank you," instead of, "Oh my goodness, where do I sign up?" That's 5 seconds that I would like to relive. And then my tale would have been totally different. But no, there absolutely no way I would have gotten it. And I did not have my kids working in those houses with me. I didn't even want them to even think about it, because that won't going to happen. So no, I would never got back in it.
Did Susie or Michael, did either of you have anything you wanted to add?
I'll second that. Everything Craig said, I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. So I understand that each of you had different experiences leaving the contract grower production system. Can each of you tell us a little bit about that? What made you quit growing? I know we've touched on some of that already, but what was it that made you finally quit growing, and how did you get out of the contract?
I'll say it really quick for me, because it's a quick story. There was a moment where Susie mentioned some upgrades. There was a moment that came on our farm where the integrator came down there and they demanded it was an alarm system. They wanted us to get into a new alarm system. So my family and I thought that, that it's a good idea. We could use an updated alarm system. And come to find out, we had no say in who the contractor was going to be to install the alarm system. We had no say in what alarm system we were going to use. So I think that was a turning point for us, because we realized at that point, I said, well, we might as well just hand you the checkbook and let you run our farm. And it was that moment that a light bulb went off in my head. And I said, there is no way to win at this. There is absolutely no way. And we got into a long drawn out scuffle over an alarm system. And they wound up telling us that if that was the alarm system that they all sat around and said that they wanted all their farms to have. And, we were fine with putting a new alarm system in. Give us some parameters, let us shop around, let us make sure that we're making the right decision for our farm, not the right decision for your company. And at that moment, they had, when we bucked up at them, everything changed. Their true colors come out. They told us if we didn't agree to get the alarm system installed and put in, that we wouldn't get any more birds. So make a long story short, we said, well, that's fine, because we're not putting that alarm system in. We don't have a problem, trying to upgrade and do things for the betterment of our facility, but allowing you to just control our bank account was not something that went over well with us. So we wound up being forced out, sort of say, because we didn't conform. And most of us that get out of contract growing are usually forced out. I wouldn't say that we were, we necessarily exited out on our own terms. We were forced out. But fortunately, we were able to sell that farm and just get out from up underneath it. But if we weren't able to sell it, and these are some of the issues that I know, I hope some farmers out there are listening. These are some of the issues that we'd love just to share our experiences with, because there are some loopholes and and potholes and all kind of things that you will fall into just trying to get freed from contract growing. Susie?
My experience was in 2010, the integrator that we were working for sent out a mandated letter saying that if you didn't update to their specifications for this, that you would be shut down in 2 years. And it wasn't just me that got shut down. Around me, there were 50 other houses, chicken houses, not 50 growers, but 50 houses got shut down. And it happened to be all the old growers that had started in 1987 with me. We were all getting older. I was the youngest of the group that got shut down. And they just decided that basically that they wanted to shut us all down. So they put these in place, all these updates that was ridiculous to me, but they knew that nobody could afford to do the updates on all the houses as old as they were. We had some houses that were newer, but most of the houses were of the 1985 to 87 is when they did a 200 house expansion in Clarksville. And so at that point, when we reached 2012, we said, hey, we're not going to update. I tried to update 3 of the new houses and keep growing, but Tyson wanted all 6 houses updated. They didn't want me to shut down 3. So at that point, our loan was denied. And so we ended up we were shut down by Tyson through their update program. And that's when we started with all our legal issues. We went through bankruptcy, and we had to fight our creditor for 14 months in bankruptcy court because of the way they do business. And then we finished, we've been out of bankruptcy for 2 years now, but we still have our debt. We're still both paying, we're still both working to pay on it. My husband just turned 70. I just turned 63. And we are still got a enormous debt that is going to probably sometime end up taking our farm, or not taking it, but having us to force to sell. And it was a 3-generational farm.
Wow.
Sorry to hear that, Susie. Thank you for sharing that, though.
Yeah. Susie was a child bride, apparently. So my exit was a little different. I just kind of locked down probably 6-7 years out from when I actually exited the business, and I just decided I wasn't going to do any more upgrades. There was never any cost benefit analysis shared with you where you would ever get your money back. And if I did it myself, I was looking at 15 years for the payback for the last upgrade I did. And certainly there would have been 3 or 4 more upgrades within that 15-year period. So it's a never-ending thing. And always, you hear it referred to a lot of time as a treadmill of debt. And where my situation was, the treadmill hadn't stopped, but it had slowed down enough I could jump off and not get hurt. But the way I got to that point was in 2014, I think I was working with a reporter, and we were doing, I don't know, he called me out of the blue. And so he came down to the farm, and everything that I did in that expose, me and that other reporter had already covered, but his editor got scared. And so we wound up doing a story on antibiotics and chicken feed. So it came out, and he introduced me to a lady that was his neighbor or something, and he called her the chicken expert. She worked with an organization called Compassion in World Farming. And she called me, and we talked, and she said, "Would you mind if I come film?" I'm like, "No." And so that kind of took her off guard, because there's an animal rights activist coming to a factory farmer's farm, and, we're not supposed to get along. That's just not supposed to happen. And like I said, the video came out. It was kind of like lightning in a bottle. Ag gag was a big thing then. And, they didn't want people on the farms. They surely didn't want video on the farms. And so as soon as that released, naturally, it was this farm does not reflect our lofty standards. And the people that were saying that and did not know me, had never stepped one time on my farm. I had enough papers that they had left on my farm telling me what a good job I did, that I didn't fall for the hype. So that kind of changed when I started giving the reporters those positive service reports. And then I staged it. Yeah, I'm on stage it, blow the whistle on myself, blow it right. Yeah. But they put me on this thing that's called they have a thing called performance improvement plan, meaning if your costs are high compared to your peers, that they'll put you on they'll put, basically it's more scrutiny. Well, mine was a performance improvement plan for biosecurity and animal welfare. As far as I know, I'm the only chicken farmer in the history of chicken farmer that's ever been put on that kind of performance improvement plan, because it was nowhere in the contract spelled out, though it should have been. So, and that was obviously, retaliation for releasing the video. And they came like 3 and 4 at the time, 2 or 3 times a week, USDA audits, all kind of. But so after about a year of it, I had nothing left with the business. And like I said, the treadmill had slowed down enough I could jump off. I woke up one morning, and I did this right here, and I waited for my wife to get up. I looked at her, I said, "Can I quit?" She said, "I told you that 2 years ago," which we couldn't have quit 2 years ago, but she did tell me that 2 years ago. And I said, "Well, I'm done." And I sent them an email and told them that if they wouldn't let me out of the 90-day, there's a 90-day thing now that you have to give 90 days notice to terminate your contract. I said, if you don't want to waive it, I'm giving you my 90 days notice right now. They said, "No, we'll be happy to waive it." So champagne corks were popping, I'm sure, in Salisbury, Maryland. But that was it. I mean, there was no, I just woke up one morning, side eyes done, and life goes on.
Wow. Well, thank each of you for sharing those stories with us. I know, SRAP is so grateful to have you on our team, and we're so grateful to have y'all here helping spread awareness about your experience and how we can help other contract growers and even those who may be thinking about going into the business. So with that, I do want to give folks a few seconds to ask any questions that they might have. I'm just going to take a look at the chat here real quick to see if anybody has any questions. So give us just a second. We do have a couple of questions about any tips for being a poultry farmer and avoiding contract growers. Is that a question that y'all think you could answer? I can read it to you one more time if you'd like. Craig, you're on mute.
Okay, I'm off now.
Did you want me to repeat the question?
Yeah, I didn't get the second part of it.
Yeah. So we have someone asking if we have any tips for being a poultry farmer and avoiding contract growers. I'm not sure I understand the last part of that question, but maybe you guys can speak to the first part about any tips of what it's like to be in that business.
Maybe it means avoiding contract growing, maybe possibly.
Sure. Also, actually, let's skip ahead to one more question. This one is asking, have you come across any contract growers who are happy with their situation?
I'm sure there are. Personally, all the growers I've ever worked with were pretty miserable. I could think of some that tolerate it. I can't think of one that I would say is giddy. No, I haven't.
No, I agree. I can't say that I've come across any that were happy. When we wind up getting to a moment where you can talk and kick the tires, where you're not under the fear of judgment from the integrator. They've all got issues. I don't know any of them that can be happy. And we're gonna talk about a tournament system in the future episode. I don't know how anybody can be happy with the business model that's set out, because it's not set out for anybody to be successful.
I do. We was a grower in our community, and he was what we call a pet grower. And that is a grower that the company sees he gets the best chickens, they get the best feed, they get the best everything. He enjoyed growing. He talked about it all the time, done, good, made money, was really satisfied until this update that got us. His houses was the same age as ours. Well, they had a change in the hatchery manager. They had some changes up there. Well, all of a sudden, he wasn't a pet grower anymore. He was getting the same chickens we were. And within a year, he had done sold out. So most of them that is satisfied with growing chickens is the ones that the company wants to put on a pedestal to show everybody else how good it is.
Wow, that's really interesting, Susie. Thanks for sharing that. We do have one more question from Jennifer. She wants to know if any of you still farm, and if so, how and what do you grow?
Well, I got out of the chicken farming in January 2016, and I'm sitting there, I'm looking at those empty buildings, and they need to be doing something. So the lady I worked with that was from Compassion, she and I have kicked around for years. Okay, what can we do? The alternative use for it. So actually, I'm back on I never left the farm, but I'm back into it now, and we're actually going to start raising mushrooms this year. So yeah.
Me, I still have my cattle farm. I don't have cows on it right now, but we do. I do have some laying hens that I sell eggs off of once in a while, but basically we lost our cattle and our chicken farm. We didn't lose it. We still have the land, but we lost the business of it.
I'll say absolutely, but on a sustainable agriculture side, we have some chickens, and we plant a garden, and we do things on the way it was meant to be. How about I say it like that?
Thanks, Michael. So we have one last question. Many people are aware of the dangers of industrial livestock operations, and there's often an impulse to blame the people who are operating these facilities. How would you address this perspective, and what should these people know that they might not be considering now?
Well, I mean, the integrator, I mean, the farmer is out here, we're playing the hand that's dealt us. I mean, the breed of the chicken, it's bred to suffer, but that's what we raise. The amount of chickens they put in a house, that's determined by the integrator. You know, how often you clean those houses out, that's determined by the integrator, the type of feed. And so the whole program is just, John Oliver put it best. He said, everything that makes money, the chicken company owns. Everything that costs money, the farmer owns. Not only are we dealing with the hand that's dealt us, we have to deal with the hundreds of tons of waste that it comes along with it. There's no industry in the world, hardly, I mean, there's some, but not many, that can just pass the buck on that kind of waste. And it can be a chore to manage sometimes. And I think a lot of times, most of the complaints from the farms, it probably isn't so much the farm itself, but it is when you start applying it over hundreds of acres of land. If that farm is like, if it's really, really, really bad, there probably is a farmer management problem, but generally not so. It's we're just doing the best with what we got. I mean, the ventilation, all that's set by the integrator.
Did Susie or you, Michael, have anything to add to that?
Yeah, one thing that when I quit growing, my husband grew for 6 years. I grew for 17, approximately. And when the integrators changed from the clear curtains that you could lower and give your birds fresh air, and they went to what they call blackout houses. And when I seen that, and I don't like the dark anyway, so basically you stumble around in the dark with a flashlight trying to pick up chickens. I said, I'm not a mold, I'm not doing it anymore. But we had no control over doing that. They forced us into putting blackout curtains on our houses or shutting us down. That's just how they always come about it. You either do it or you shut down. So anything we do is what they have told us.
I'll close this out with or close this question out, Julie, by just saying, you know, if the question was aimed at maybe trying to see how the farmer would respond to somebody pointing a finger at him, I can say this, you know, industrial poultry is for the most part very secretive. I mean, we couldn't have anybody come up on our farm. There was biosecurity protocols that we had to follow, and you're not going to find many farmers that are going to, you know, give somebody a free pass to come see what goes on behind closed doors. When we got into farming, industrial farming, we never really saw that side of farming that people want to point a finger at. You know, we were sold with little baby chicks running around in that little house on the prairie lifestyle. It wasn't until we actually got into the farm that everything was mandated, as Craig said, by the integrator, and you are all of a sudden trapped into this reality that, oh my God, that's what I'm buying on the grocery store shelf, and you're a part of it, but you're trapped. There's as we've been saying this whole episode here, there's almost no way out. And so the reality is, you're kind of hoodwinked into getting involved into farming the way that you know the public might see it.
Okay, thanks, Michael. I think that wraps up all of our questions for today. So we just want to thank everyone who joined us today. We really appreciate your time and your support, and we just really appreciate you tuning in. We want to let you know that, again, this is the first episode in a 4-part series on Facebook Live. Our next episode will be happening on April 12th at 4 p.m. Central, and we'll be talking about the tournament system during that episode. And for the episodes following that, feel free to check out our event on our Facebook page for more info. And also to stay connected with SRAP's work in protecting communities from factory farms, please visit our website, sraproject.org. And there you can scroll to the bottom and sign up to our newsletter. That way you can stay plugged in with everything that's happening at SRAP. And then also, if you are a contract grower who is in need of assistance, we're going to put a link in the chat where you can contact us for help. So with that, yeah, I think that wraps everything up. Thanks everyone. Thanks Craig, Michael, Susie, and we hope everyone who joined today will be back on April 12th for episode number 2. Thanks everyone. Have a good night.